So we are holding right after Shavuos. We are starting this week. Every year after Shavuos, we are reading Parshas Naso. So Parshas Naso, this is the longest Parsha of the year. Yeah, it's a Parsha that has the most single Parsha that has the most amount of verses. And actually, those who study the Medrash know that Parshas Naso is the most amount of Medrash. There is 176 verses in Parshas Naso. There's 176 verses in the longest chapter in Tehillim, chapter 119. And there's 176 pages in the longest tractate in Talmud, tractate Baba Basra. So there is something about the Shabbos after we receive the Torah at Mount Sinai. We go into a Shabbos that we are reading the longest Parsha in the Torah. Quite a fascinating thing that we're going to be. By the way, the Zohar on Parshas Naso is the longest Zohar of the year. Something about Parshas Naso that there's a lot of writing, and it seems like that after the Torah was given, the Shabbos after the Torah was given, there's a lot of enthusiasm on Torah study. We just got the Torah, so there's a lot of writing, there's a lot of learning, and it was a week filled with a lot of Torah study. I mean, we had a three-day holiday, Shabbos and Sunday and Monday, and then whatever was left of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, trying to learn as much as we can of the Parsha of the week. So tonight, I want to focus on a part of the Parsha of the week in Parshas Naso, and we are going to talk about one of the topics in the Parsha that I just completed together with Meir Simcha. Those of you who know my son, Meir Simcha. I just completed studying with him an entire tractate of Talmud. So we learned from Pesach all the way till Shavuos every day. We studied a full page of Talmud, a daf, and we studied the tractate of Sota. The tractate of Sota is 49 pages. So basically, you learn every day of the Omer, you learn a page. So ends up being that when it comes Shavuos, you do a siyum. You do a siyum on the tractate. So Meir Simcha came to me the first day of Pesach, once we started counting the Omer, and he says, "Can we do Sota together?" Now, Meir Simcha is very consistent. When he takes upon himself a project, it's not done halfway. It's all done or not done. And I know that I'm going to be tied in every day to study with him a page. It was a magnificent journey because he's a fast learner. And we used to learn a page we used to do it without the Rashi and Tosfot. It took us between sometimes even 20 minutes. We were able to finish an entire page of Talmud. Really delight to study with him. So in the Parsha of this week, right there, chapter 5, verse 12, the Parsha represents us with the Sota. So for those of you who don't familiar what a Sota is, it's not soda, it's called Sota. And Sota is, literally what it means is a woman who goes astray from her husband, and she gets involved with another man. The husband is growing suspicious about his wife's affairs, and he invites two witnesses to be present as he's warning her, saying, "Do not go into our hiding place with this and this man." And he says particularly the name of the person that he is suspicious that she's hiding with. Now, what happens is, if the witness comes and say, or if the husband finds out that the wife actually did go back into hiding with this man, and now there is a suspicion, there is a question if she became defiled in relationships with that stranger. Make a long story short, the woman is being brought to the temple. At the times of before the temple, there was a tabernacle. She was brought into the temple, and at the temple, the Kohen gives the woman to drink water from the urn mixed with dirt from the ground of the urn. Plus, they take a scroll where they write on it the verses that carries the curse and the promise regarding if she was defiled. And the woman is being administrated to drink that cocktail, that bitter water. And what would have happened as a result is it would be testing water. If she actually got involved in relations, basically what would have happened to her was she goes through some very horrific death where her stomach and her body basically gets ruptured, and she goes through a very embarrassing and hurtful form of perishing. If the woman was clean and she didn't do anything inappropriate, then the opposite would have happened. The woman becomes much more beautiful and much more healthy, and she gives birth to children, and there's a lot of good blessings come upon her. This is the Parsha of Soita. There's many, many more details. There's 49 pages of Talmud that discuss the different variations and laws, how it's being done. In today's class, I want to focus on one element in this entire Parsha. And really, what I'm trying in these classes, if you are following the short period of time showing up to this class, I'm looking for inspiration. Is what I'm looking for. You know, we could have a lot of Talmudic discussions and debates and go through all sorts of intellectual arguments about different verses and the meaning of those verses. My way of learning is I'm looking for inspiration. I'm looking for relevance. I'm looking for, when I look at the Parsha of the week, I want to see, what does the Parsha have to tell me today? What is it? What is it coming to change my life, the life of the people that I love, the people of in my family, in my community? What is the message there that could be a little bit revolutionary, a little bit uplifting, something that has to do with our times and our days? Obviously, the practice of sota does not exist. By the way, the Talmud says that the practice of sota does not exist even in the times of the temple. It only existed for a short period of time, and later on it was canceled. It wasn't even practiced because there was so much confusion, and the world kind of like wasn't anymore a world that those practices would be able to practice. So we are reading at this Parsha, we are connecting to the message of that. Obviously, when I take a look on this Parsha, I am trying to find what is dear to my heart, what is dear talking to me. Berry Farkash, 2022, while it's raining outside. What does it tell me? What do I connect with? So I want to take on a little bit of a journey. It's quite a beautiful lesson. You know, those of you who enjoy this will enjoy this particularly even more. So I'm going to open up with a little joke. Maybe some of you know that joke already. So there was, by this border between two countries, and the border patrol is noticing this young guy coming through with a bicycle, and attached to the bicycle there is he carries a little wagon with sand. And he stops the boy and he says, okay, so what are you carrying? He says, I'm carrying sand. And obviously the border patrol agent knows nobody just carries a bucket of sand across the border. So he starts checking and turning, and lo and behold, it's just sand. Okay, lets him go through. Next day, the same boy comes with the same carriage with sand in it. This time, the border patrol agent is pulling out his metal detectors. He starts testing and checking and looking. Nothing, just sand. He says, but what is it? He said, nothing, just sand. Fine, lets him go through. And like this, every day. And he tries different forms of testing to see what is he smuggling through. Always, every day, a bucket of sand. Now, this border patrol agent is getting really suspicious. Something doesn't add up with this kid. And I have searched, I looked everywhere. There is nothing, comes with a bicycle, carries the bucket with the sand. Nothing is smuggled in the sand, nothing. He takes this boy and he says, listen, I know and you know that you are smuggling through something. This is something I have never seen. This is going on for weeks. I promise you I'm not going to make you any trouble. I promise you. Just tell me, what are you bringing through the border? The boy said, bicycles. I'm smuggling bicycles. Sometimes we don't notice even what's happening right below our face. Yesterday, I attended, together with Nechama, the school at a dinner, and they had a mentalist. And he was doing a very fabulous show. Literally, people were just dropping their jaw from amazement of this mentalist, the tricks that he was making. And the essence of what a mentalist does is he does things right in front of your nose, and he makes sure that your attention is on something completely different. And while your attention is on something else, he makes his trick. And this is the essence. That's how he steals things. This is how he takes out things from one person's pocket. He puts in another person's pocket. It's all about playing with your mind and basically catching you in those places where you're not aware, what we call in English, in your blind spot, and right there accomplishing some incredible things. Now, in truth, throughout our life, we are smuggling through things. Our entire day, there is some type of a smuggler that lives inside of us that keeps on robbing us of the most beautiful things of our lives. And we all know his identity. Some of us call him the evil inclination. Some of them call him the Yetzer Hara. Some of them call him, Satan, whatever name you call him. But there is that smuggler inside of you, extremely sophisticated. And somehow he knows how to smuggle from us and take away from us and rob from us the most beautiful moments of our lives. I will just use one example that some of us will very much identify with. And that is what happens the moment you wake up in the morning. This is probably the most glorious moment in a person's life, is the moment he opens up his eyes in the morning. Life just began all over. Reborn. He's just stepping into a whole new day. And the first thing is, I don't think I slept enough. I think I'm still tired. Or some people who do wake up, first thing is, let me see on my phone what happened overnight. They're still laying in bed and they're already checking the phone, they're checking the news. The most beautiful hours of a person's day is those hours when he wakes up. His mind is fresh. His heart is with a new beat. He just got his breath back. This should be the hours of meditation, of prayer, of singing, of watering your plants, sitting down and looking out to this beautiful sun that's just shining again. It should be an hour of marveling on yourself, on your creation, an hour of prayer. And so many of us report that that hour in the morning gets so robbed away from us before we turn around. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. And where did our day go? Didn't have a chance to inspire, didn't have a chance to be uplifted. And this is what happens in so many wonderful and marvelous moments of our day, where we have to be in a place of awareness and open-minded and open heart. And somehow those moments get robbed away and taken away by some very interesting current of events and some like almost like an outside power that possesses us in those very moments. I mean, so many times of us, we are watching people who built a beautiful career. Those of you who followed some of the news in the last couple of years, people who built an empire, built a career, built a life, built a legacy, religious leaders, and one stupid act, and they lose everything. Everything from their life work gets robbed away and taken away in one moment because of something so silly, something so frivolous, something so stupid. And we watch with amazement. And like, what? How did you allow that? Someone that sophisticated like you allowed your entire life work to just go up in smoke just like this. What happened? Now we call it the Yetzer Hara. We call it the evil inclination. We call it Satan. Some of us will call it an act of lunacy. We look at this Sota, this woman who is married. The Torah begins with the words, Ish ish kisiste ishto. Yes, the woman, the wife, is siste. She's called a Sota. Now, when you look at the word Sota, it's not written with a samach. It's written with the letter sin. So it read, if the Torah doesn't have vowels, it says Shota. Shota means fool. A man who his wife turned foolish. Now, really what it means is, the word Sota means deviating, going astray, moving from the right path. But the Torah calls it Sota with a sin. And by the way, the Talmud that I just learned with Meir Simcha, the Talmud says that this is intentional. No two people doing an act of adultery unless something foolish happened to them. The verse is, and I'll quote, "In Adam oiver avera, Elohim kein ichnas beruach shtus." No person ever does an act of adultery or any form of misbehavior or acting out unless something stupid happened to him. Something went wrong. He went Meshiga. No human being in his normal mind, healthy mind, will do anything like that. Now, first of all, I'm looking at these people who do this type of stuff, extremely sophisticated. To call our evil inclination fool or an act of foolishness, I mean, maybe the act is foolish, but the way we are getting into the act, some of those stories that you hear are highly sophisticated. There is a lot of planning going on, a lot of thinking going on. It doesn't just happen, we go with sugar and we start misbehaving. It's interesting that the Torah calls acts of sin acts of stupidity, acts of foolishness. But really, the foolishness is the outcome of the act. As I would say, the outcome of the act is that you lost, if you watch the the Me Too movement that was very popular a couple of months ago. I don't know if people still remember that movement. Where people and people who had religious organizations, people who had CEOs of companies in seconds, in moments, because of some act of misbehavior, of acting out, they lost their entire life work. Obviously, the outcome of the act is very foolish. But what drives people to do this act is sometimes very sophisticated. By the way, King Solomon, when he talks about the evil inclination in the book of Ecclesiastics, you know what he calls? He calls the evil inclination. He calls him a fool, an old fool. I quote to you the verse. He says, it's better to be involved with the child, and this is the child is called the Yetzer Tov, the good inclination. It's better to be involved with a child who doesn't have any power, with a powerless child, than being involved with that old, foolish king. He calls the evil inclination old, foolish king. And Rashi says, little child is the Yetzer Tov, because it only shows up at the age of 13. And why does he call the Yetzer Tov powerless? Is because the body doesn't listen to him. He has no power over the body, like the Yetzer Hara is. And he's wise. That little child is wise because he gives you the wisdom to go to the right path. And then the evil inclination is called an old foolish king. And he says, why is he called a king? Because he has total control over our body. Why is he called old? Because he is there from the moment of birth. But why foolish? Why foolish? The title foolish, to call our really cunning evil inclination. Yeah, some of present company excluded. But sometimes you read stories about people, how sophisticated their evil inclination is, how deviant and over smarting it is. You close the door, it comes through the window. You close the window, it comes to the roof. I mean, very, very sophisticated evil inclination. Attracted in brachas, the Talmud says that the evil inclination is like a fly. Why is it called a fly? Those of you who had an experience with a fly know the fly doesn't give up. You blow with your hand on one side, something's on your left side. You blow on the left side, it's on your right side. On your head, on your forehead, you keep on clapping, punching, the fly keeps on coming back, keeps on coming back. He doesn't get tired. You get tired from fighting with a fly. The fly never gets tired. The Yetzer Hara is very, very sophisticated. And it's always marvelous where he shows up in the person. When does he show up? The Gemara says in Tractate Shabbos that the Yetzer Hara doesn't just come to the person and say, oh, let's do something bad. He says, first he comes to them and he says, do this. Next day he says, comes to do that. And eventually he sees that you already are all tangled in. So he will invite you to do an act of idolatry or adultery. He doesn't have the guts to show up to a person and say, okay, let's do an act of adultery. He creates a web. He creates a whole scenery where the person gets strapped in and he slowly tangles them up. There was a chassid, beautiful story. There was a chassid. His name was Remendel Futafas. He was an elder Chabad chassid who was in Russia. And his wife and his children left Russia, and he stayed behind to continue developing schools and Hebrew schools when the communists were not allowing it to happen. And he went around and he was building mikvahs. I said so many stories from him because he was quite a legend. I actually saw him. I mean, I saw him in real life. He lived till 1994. So I was young enough and old enough to see him, to listen to some of his stories. So the Mendel was sent away to Siberia. Eventually, the Soviets caught up with him and they put him in prison. He was in prison for a couple of months, and then they put him on a train and they sent him off to the gulags. And he was there for 10 years. It was supposed to be for 20 years, but then Stalin died and he was released. Now, what does a Yid do in Siberia all by himself? No books, nothing to study. He has nothing to learn, no partners to study Torah with. So Mendel was a very smart man. And he made a decision that everything that he sees, everything that he hears, he will use it as a way to learn something about Hashem, about the world, basically to use everything he sees and experiences as a metaphor. So he came out after 10 years of being in prison, he came out with a lot of beautiful fables and metaphors that are all based on experiences that he had while he was in the Gulag. A lot of magnificent stories that he used to share with the deep meditations that he found in those incidents. So one of his beautiful analogies, one of his beautiful fables was, he was laying one night, he was laying in the barrack, and he was watching a web. Spider was building a web right above his bed. Couldn't fall asleep. He was just staring on this spider, how he's building his web. He was very fascinated by the creation of this beautiful, complex web that a spider is creating. And every night before he fell asleep, he was watching that spider web, mesmerized by the wonders of creation, how this creature builds this beautiful web with all the strings and how it's being done. And one day, the web was all complete, and he sees how a fly got cut into the web. And Remendel says, I'm watching the fly getting cut into the web, and I see that the spider moves away to the side. And what happened is the fly, as it gets cut into the web, he says the fly begins to jump, trying to get out. And every time he tries to jump, he noticed another part of the web gets tangled around this poor fly. But the spider is just standing on the side, it does nothing. And as long as the fly tries to get out and he's jerking and he's moving and he says, little bit of spider standing on the side doing nothing. But then the fly gives up. And in the moment the fly gives up and he stops moving, suddenly Mr. Spider starts walking down towards that fly. He says he sees how he puts one of his, I don't know what it's called in English, like a straw into the spider, into the fly. He sucks out all the inside of him, and that fly just dies there. And he said, I'm watching this, and I'm thinking about the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara creating this web on a person, trying to catch the person in, creates this beautiful web. And yes, sometimes we get cut in. We get tangled. We start looking. We start getting interested. As long as we fight and we want to get out, the Yetzer Hara stands on the side. He knows this is the person who's fighting. I'm not starting up with him. He's still fighting. But in the second the person gives in, then the Yetzer Hara knows I could take all the energy away from him. The Talmud tells us this is what the Yetzer Hara does. One day he starts with one little thing, then he comes to another little thing, and eventually, when he feels that the person is kind of like all tangled in, stopping to fight, this is when the Yetzer Hara comes and he takes everything away from the person. So what does it mean the Yetzer Hara is foolish? What is the foolishness? The opposite. It's very sophisticated. Very sophisticated. What we come to an understanding is, first of all, why are we even talking about Yetzer Hara today? Usually, this is the first Parsha that we read after Shavuot, the holiday when we got the Torah. And like we said before, this is the longest Parsha of the Torah, the longest Zohar. But it says that during this time of the year is a time when each and every one of us is beginning to get closer to the summer. And this is the time of the year where our body starts receiving more attention. During the winter, we are more closed up, we're more in the house. Certain inclinations in the person begin to expose and open up as the warm summer days come. This is why there's a custom that during this time of the year, we read Ethics of Our Fathers every Shabbos. And the idea of reading Ethics of Our Fathers to kind of like supporting us during this summer months where we need a little bit more support in our battles with our evil inclination, with the Yetzer Hara. So this is why it's important to learn a little bit about this topic and to really wake us up to some of those new realities that maybe some of us never learned or forgot. There is a tractate in Baba Basra. This is one of the biggest tractates in the Talmud. Like I said, it's 176 pages. Within that tractate, there is a couple of pages where there is this most incredible stories, like stories that don't look unreal. Some of them are really unreal, it's just metaphors. Some of them are real, but they seem unreal. And the one who tells those stories is a rabbi with the name Rabbi Bar Chane. Rabbi Bar Chane. All sorts of journeys that he's taking, coming back with some magnificent, incredible things that he sees, interesting islands and waves, and he sees bodies coming up to resurrection. Incredible things. Rabbi Baba Chana travels. If you ever want to read that for yourself, open up Tractate Baba Basra, page 73 and on. And it's magnificent, magnificent. One of the stories that he brings over there, he tells the story as follows, that he was one time sitting with a group of sailors. And the group of sailors tell him that there is a wave that comes up from the ocean every once in a while. That wave could drown an entire boat. And that wave looks like, on the tip of that wave, it looks like white fire. And in order to save yourself from that wave, you have to hit the tip of the wave with a special cane that has the name of Hashem on it. And when we hit the wave with that cane, the wave goes down and the boat gets saved. Now, what exactly happened? What exactly is he sharing of? So the commentaries say that obviously this is more of a metaphor. And when Rabbi is discussing in this story, he's discussing this question that each and every one of us ask, and the question what our class is dedicated is, how do we save ourselves from this incredible wave, the overwhelm that this evil inclination every once in a while is coming towards us? How does it bring down that boat, that career, that powerful person? How does that even happen? How does the wave have the ability to do that? So Rabbi Babar Chana says, you know what the wave is? When you see that wave is painted with a white shine of a white fire. The evil inclination doesn't just amplify by us how delightful something is, how pleasurable it is. Yeah. The evil inclination, when it comes to a person to convince him to do something bad, the way he comes is, he tells you, this is the best thing for you to do right now. He's using a sophisticated argument. Sometimes we think temptation is just animalistic. Yeah, he's just coming here to intrigue your imagination, make it look exciting, to make it look glittery. He says the power of that wave is that it carries with it this light. If you just do that, everything in your life will fall into place. You know, Hasidim used to say that the evil inclination's original name was Satan. And he looked like Satan. He had those horns, you know, those pictures of Satan. He actually looked like that. And no one was willing to listen to him. When someone looks like this, no one wants to listen to him. No one was listening to him. What did he decide to do? He decided to put on long payas. He decided to wear a long black coat and a shtreimel, and he started looking like a chassid. And in that moment, when people stopped recognizing him as Satan, people became very good friends of him. So what happened as a result of recognizing is that Yetzer Hara comes to the person. It doesn't come to you and say, do bad things. Yetzer Hara comes to the person and he says, listen, why should you wake up right now? If you sleep for another hour, you're going to be able to daven a lot more with kavana if you wake up right now. Right now, you're still tired. If you wake up, you'll be grouchy. The whole day will be difficult. Sleep for another hour. Now you think that's my beautiful, healthy self that tells me that I need to sleep for another hour. The Yetzer Hara comes and tells you, why should you give so much money to one organization? You know, divide it into 10 organizations. Why should you give right now? Let's wait till the high holidays, then we should give it. The only thing he accomplishes is he can delay the good deed for a little longer. He can diminish the excitement of that moment. That is the power. He doesn't come anymore to the person and say, okay, you know what? Let's just go and convert to Christianity. Let's just go and do an act of lunacy. No. The Yetzer Hara put on beautiful garments of a healer. He puts on beautiful garments of a rabbi sometimes. He talks like a very high spiritual, sophisticated human being. He comes to the woman, the sota, and he tells her, I know you're feeling lonely. This guy is going to take away the loneliness. Just go with him. He's going to give you something that your husband, who is so mean to you and so absent, this guy is going to give you that love that you really want. Now, the story of David and Bathsheba, we spoke about it last week. The Gemara says, how did the Satan manage to get David to fall with Bathsheba? So the Talmud says he came to David and he said to David, you know, in general, you shouldn't just have marital relations at night. A guy like you should have marital relations during the day. So when you have marital relations during the day, your body is more relaxed and you're able to focus on your work better. And King David said, you know, the moment I listened to that piece of advice from an inner evil inclination, and I forgot that the way sexuality works is, more you satisfy, bigger the craving. If I wouldn't satisfy that craving of intercourse during the day, I would have never able to fall into the sin, when it was ultimately a sin with Bathsheba. He was able to notice the pattern, how he got to it. He didn't get to sin with Bathsheba. He just woke up one night and he decided, that's it, I have to sin with this woman. It was a pattern of deviating from sanctity, from holiness, from mindfulness about intimacy, allowing that craving to take over in a healthy way with his wife, with his kosher relationships. And once he got tangled in, when the next inclination, when the next temptation came up, he was totally lost. There is a beautiful story with one of the great tzaddikim. His name was Nachman from Chernobyl. He was poor, completely, had nothing. Any money that was brought to him, he used to give out that day to charity. He never went to sleep at night with money in the house. Happened to be that he had a daughter, and his daughter was at the age of getting married, and there was no money. The rabbi, the father, would give out all the money away to charity, and there was nothing. So the rabbi had a gabbai. You know what a gabbai is? A gabbai is someone who takes care of the rabbi's affairs. And the gabbai saw that the rabbi is negligent and he's giving everything away. He decided that one of the next guy who shows up or wants to give a big donation, he's going to take him to the side. He's going to tell him, listen, the rabbi has to marry off his daughter. This time we are collecting for the rabbi's daughter's marriage. No. Next time a rich man shows up, the gabbai takes him to the corner and he says, you know, the rabbi has a daughter. We have to marry her off. There's no money in the house. The rich man goes and he gives all the money for the wedding, leaves a massive check on the table. So that will be for the wedding. As this rich man walks out of the room, another chassid walks in next in line, and he tells the Rebbe that he needs a loan because he has to marry off his daughter and he doesn't have any money. The Rebbe takes the check that's on the table and he hands it over to the guy and he says, here, take, go make the wedding. The gabbai couldn't hold it in anymore. He says, Rebbe, you know how difficult the situation is at home. How do you give out this money? This money was given for your daughter's wedding. So the Rebbe says, listen, I really wanted to take this money for myself, but look, the guy walked in, he needed help. And then the Rebbe says, you know what, I'll tell you really what happened in my heart inside. When that chassid came in and he told me that he needs help, so my first instinctive reaction was to give him the money. I wanted to give him all the money right away, like I always do. But then suddenly a thought came into my mind and I said to myself, you know, why should I give one guy so much money? I should divide this check and give a couple of people, different people help. Why should I just help one person with his money? And I started thinking. And then suddenly I said, wait a minute. When I got the money, I didn't think for 1 second to divide that in different families. Why suddenly am I thinking to divide this, different people? Because it's for someone else. So right away I realized that's my evil inclination talking. This is the Yetzer Hara, just confiscated me for a moment to convince me to do, instead of giving it to one, divided it to a couple of people, give it to 5 people. I said, that idea, this self-righteous idea, did not come from a good place. I took all the money and I just gave it to him. I told my Yetzer Hara, I know you. And don't worry. Another person came a few minutes later. Another rich man showed up and he brought the money, whatever was needed for the rabbi's daughter's wedding. And yes, she got married and everything. The end of the story is that she lived happily ever after, like every good story ends. But the point of the story, the essence of the story is the awareness of where does the evil inclination get in? How does it get in? That's the great mystery. How did I get to this point? And becoming aware that our evil inclination comes in a very, very subtle. He never shows up gross and dirty and soiled. That's the end of it. It always ends that way. It always ends with us being on the floor, soiled, broken, hurt. Always, every incident of giving in to that inclination always ends to our demise. But the question is, how did it get in? Who let him in the first place? Foolishness. The foolishness is, what is the foolishness? The foolishness is that a person believes that something good can come out of something bad. This is the foolishness. The Sota believes that if she's just going to make love with this guy, she's finally going to corner all the problems of her life, solve all the loneliness. She's going to be the happiest person on planet Earth because she's finally got herself that person that is going to give her true love. And you know what? No, she did not. She ends up on the floor of the temple, embarrassed, humiliated, hurt for herself, for her children, embarrassed for the rest of eternity. There is no such a thing, small mistakes. If it's wrong, you bet nothing good will come out of it. And this is where it starts. It starts with that foolishness, with that illusion, where the person thinks, I can do something bad and everything will be okay. Nothing bad will happen to me. The blurred vision that our evil inclination comes to the story of Joseph and the wife of Potiphera. Yeah, we all know the story. Where Joseph is all alone in Egypt. And every day she's trying to convince him, come, be with me, be with me, be with me. And Joseph is listening, and there's no father around, there's no brothers around. He's all alone in Egypt. And it comes that moment where Joseph can't anymore handle the pressure. She manages to convince him that being with her will be the best thing for him. But Joseph, as that moment where he sees his father's image and he walks away. What happened? Why did his father's image cause him to walk away? So the commentaries say that his father's image reminded him, Joseph looked like Jacob, and Jacob looked like Adam. And when he saw Adam's face, he saw the face of the first human being that God created, he right away realized there's no small mistakes. You make one small mistake, and the rest of humanity pays a price. He realized the power of what happens when someone just eats from the wrong tree. That's it. And in the moment you make a small mistake, there's no small mistake. You give in, you allow it in, the end of it is not anymore in your control. He realized the power of the convincing, the power of suggestion, that the Yetzer Hara uses to convince a person to join him. He gives you this one in a lifetime opportunity. Eat from that tree. You'll become as wise as God himself. He shows him on the tip of the wave, that beautiful flashing light, and he says, that's the wave. That's the most beautiful thing for you. And you know that that wave is going to drown the boat. But it's covered in light. It's covered in promises of love, security, attachment, connection. One of the famous authors on addiction, Dr. Gabriel Mate, describes a conversation that he has with a heroin addict. And he says, everybody says, why can't you stop? Why can't you stop? Stop. We want you to stop. And he says, do you know what the feeling is when you take that into your body, that drug? What does it do to you? He says, I feel like a little baby running 100 fever, shivering cold. And suddenly my mom takes me, wraps me in a warm, cozy blanket and feeds me hot chicken soup. That's the feeling every time I take heroin. And you want me to stop that? You want me to take it away from me? Now, the addict keeps on looking for that promise. He already had that experience once, and he keeps on looking for that warm blanket. He wants to feel again, cradled. That's the illusion. It's the illusion of the heroin, of the marijuana, of the alcohol. That's the illusion of that, of the sinful behavior. That will give me ultimate love, and I'll feel safe again. When I drank, I felt so safe. Nothing was hurting me. I wasn't worried about anything. That's the false promise. That's the promise that Potiphar is trying to give Yosef. But then he sees his father. He sees Adam and is realizing there is no one little shot. There's no one little mistake. A little mistake turns into a giant mistake. From a bad thing, nothing good comes out. There is a story of the two brothers, Reb Elimelech and Reb Zusha. He's talking about Adam and his first sin. So Reb Elimelech told his brother Zusha, he says, brother, when Adam did the sin from the tree of knowledge, it says that every soul of every human being was part of Adam's body. He said, why didn't you and me stop him? You should have grabbed him by his hands and say, don't eat. We were part of him. So his brother says to him, he says, Elimelech, my beloved Elimelech brother, if we would have prevented Adam from eating from that tree, we would be walking around the whole life thinking, who knows what we missed? Who knows what a bouquet of roses would be waiting for us as a result of eating from that tree? Now we know. We know that when you eat from the wrong tree, when you eat from something that looks glorious to your eyes, when you look for something that is that incredible and amazing and you're not allowed to, the result of that is rearing children with a lot of pain, suffering, struggling, dealing with death, a world that is topsy-turvy for so many generations. Now we know what happens when we make that mistake. The Gemara says in Tractate of Sukkah that when Mashiach is going to come, God is going to punish the Yetzer Hara. It says he's going to slaughter him. Why? So the Gemara says the reason why he's going to slaughter him is because he did a little too much. He was given a job to entice us. He was given a job to turn us on. He was given a job to flare our impulse, but he did a little too much. He went a little too far with us. And the main idea of slaughtering, Talmud says, what is the idea of slaughtering on Shabbos? That slaughtering has the element of painting. Because when they slaughter, there is blood, and blood paints. You're not allowed to paint on Shabbos. So the Rebbe explains in one of his teachings, he says the Yetzer Hara's job is to paint. Painting for us a picture. And that picture that he's painting for us, that is the picture, the illusion of convincing us that there is something really incredible, something really amazing, if we're just going to do what he wants from us. So what is the best way to combat our evil inclination? The best way is not to even let him in. In Judaism, we have the laws of yichud, the laws of modesty. Yeah. All those laws were created not to just restrict people and take away from them the enjoyment in life. Those laws were created and put in place in order to create situations where the Yetzer Hara can't even walk in. The idea of being guarded, the way we dress, the way we talk, what we look at, we don't look at. The idea is to not even allow an entry to his opinion. Guarding our thoughts, guarding our mind. There is a story with a Yid who once came to the Maggid of Mezrich, and he told them that he has a lot of bad thoughts. A whole day he's thinking bad thoughts. He can't stop. The Maggid told him he should go visit his students, Reb Wolf. He has a student, his name was Reb Wolf, who lived in Zhytomyr. So Zhytomyr is known now because it's in Ukraine. He says, go to my student Reb Wolf, and he's going to teach you how to deal with those thoughts. So he traveled to Zhytomyr. It was late at night. He came to the door. He knocks and knocks and knocks and knocks. No one answers. He sees the light is on inside. Obviously, someone is awake. He hears even people talking in the house. Someone is learning or speaking. So he goes to the window. And it's freezing cold outside. Door doesn't open. After a very, very long time, his feet were about to start freezing. When he was about to give up, suddenly the door opens up, and Reb Wolf is standing by the door. And Reb Wolf is telling him, here, I'm teaching you. You don't have to open the door. That's how it is. When that evil inclination knocks on your door, you are the owner of your conscious mind. You are the owner of yourself. You don't have to open up the door. That's where your freedom of choice is. You don't have to open up the door. So the lesson is, yes, what is the foolishness? The foolishness is, what is the foolishness? The foolishness is that we allow ourselves to convince ourselves that something good will come out of bad behavior. We even allow that to have an opinion. I mentioned to you before, Mendel Futafas. I don't know why the story keeps on coming to my mind that I need to share it. So I guess I'm going to share it. And I'm going to conclude the class with that. So the story goes, Mendel says, they used to play with cards at night. They used to come back from the day of work in the forest. They used to chop wood. I don't know what they did over there. And they used to come up at night, and they were all playing cards. And it was after lights out, and the guys were playing cards. And suddenly the guard shows up, and everybody jumps, the guard is coming. Everybody jumps into their beds, pretending that they're sleeping. And the guard walks in and he says, give me the cards. There's no cards. And he starts searching the pockets. And there is no cards. He turns over the bunk. There's no cards. The guard goes out. They pull out their cards to continue playing. He walks back in. He catches them in the middle of the game. Within seconds, there is no cards. Give me the cards. Starts looking. Everybody's pocket. Nope. There's no cards. He's searching. There was just on the table. I saw them. He says, look around. You are hallucinating. We did not play cards here. Anyways, it happens for the third time. The guard is extremely frustrated. He says, I'm going to start taking down some heads over here. Anyways, the guys go to sleep. Mendel turns to one of the guys and says, what's going on over here? I saw you guys were playing cards. He says, the guy doesn't realize when he walks in, you know what we do with the cards? We stick it into the guard's pocket. He's busy looking by everyone. He's not going to look in his own jacket. The cards we just played with is in his own pocket. The last place he will look. Now, before he walks out, we pickpocket it out of his pocket back, and we continue playing. He used it as a metaphor. Sometimes we are busy finding the negativity by someone else. We got to look at our own pocket sometimes. We got to see it in ourselves. Sometimes it's hiding in our own jacket. It's sitting right there. God Almighty should help us. We should be able to overcome any inclinations, any desires, any impulses. We should live a life of complete dedication to Hashem. And the lesson is, let's not fool ourselves. We got to be good people. We have to do what Hashem wants from us. And we have to overcome those barriers, those obstacles. And when Hashem sees that we try, then He will finally bring to us the final redemption, and we're not going to have to struggle anymore. Thank you for participating. Have a good Shabbos.